Your seats. I want to thank Arissa or Arisa, depending upon the particular day, for her service putting this together. It'll go to her head. Enough. And it's Tommy's 15th birthday today. Where are you? Is he here? Oh, there you are. 15 years. No, we're not talking about spiritual growth. We're talking about abstinence. Tommy picked me up at the airport, so I have to be nice to him or I won't get a ride back. Couple housekeeping things I got to mention before we start. Glenn and his lovely wife drove all the way up here from New York to record this at their own expense, and he's selling CDs of this, hoping to get enough to cover his gas and room, etc. So he's got those for sale. They're available, plus a plethora of other stuff. There's an Ask It basket right there, and if you have any questions, stretch me. Hit me with something. I love that. I mean, I love that I don't get to think. I just have to answer. Smoking. There's smoking sections. We got to notice someone from the staff here asked us, I guess maybe we haven't been respecting those smoking areas like we should, and they ask us to honor that stuff. So we have 3 newcomer guys who are still very angry that are going to patrol those areas. If they catch you smoking where you're not supposed to, it's not going to be good. But they will make amends later, so don't worry about that. Little commercial. There's some flyers there for an AA event in Las Vegas every year that's very dear to my heart. That people come from all over the world to. It's where a lot of the people who are very active in AA and speak a lot go to listen, to get lit up. It's an unusual weekend, and there's flyers there. The suites in this beautiful hotel are $46 a night. We made it very affordable, and it's a sellout event every year. And I'm not mentioning it because we're trying to get people to buy registrations. It sells out every year. I'm mentioning because our hope is that we don't have the exact. Left unchecked, it'll be the exact same people every year, because once you go, you don't want to miss. And we'd like to have some new blood every year, so that we know that what we're doing is reaching more people rather than just the same old timers over and over again. But it sells out at 900 people. It sells out every year. We're already a third of the way through the registration. It's better than a third, and it's only April, and it's not until December. So do the math. The event is It's the only event in Alcoholics Anonymous that honors the day Bill Wilson got sober, which is a day, oddly enough, a lot of people in AA don't even know when that is. It was December 11th, 1934. And so it's the weekend the closest to December 11th, which this particular year I think is the weekend. It's a couple of days before that. I think the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. Amazing weekend. Anyway, enough commercials. So if you can get everything that it talks about through up to page 63, you get that even with good intentions, attending AA meetings with a sponsor, that there's still something really wrong with you. And when it says we cannot manage our own lives, what they're really talking about is the inside stuff. That's what I can't manage. I can't rest. No matter how much the effort, no matter how great the intention, I have an absolute inability to wrest any kind of happiness and satisfaction out of this world. I get moments of excitement and elation as I might get my way. And they're always followed by disillusionment. And whatever I've attained, the shine wears off of it so easily. So I cannot manage my own life sober, and I've tried everything there is to try, and I'm at the end of my ropes. It brings us to the formal terms of surrender, which is the suggested prayer on page 63 of the Big Book. And I'm going to read this prayer, and if you would like to say it along with me, feel free. You don't have to. You may not be ready to say this prayer, but if you want to join me. And it begins, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. What did I just say? I didn't know. I got down on my knees with another member of AA at about a year sober. I had read the prayer. I'd read this part of the book, page 60 through 63, quite a few times. I could see little glimpses of me in there and stuff, but I had no idea what I'm saying in the third step. I don't understand it. What's really going on is I want to feel better. What's really going on is that I don't seem to be getting from AA what other people seem to have gotten from AA. I'm not this happy, joyous, and free thing they talk about. I'm not that. So I'm really doing the action just because I want to fit. I want to be part of. I want what some of the stuff you guys are getting. But I don't really understand what I'm saying in that prayer. And the next 10 months of my life were very chaotic and very stressful. And I tell you, there were times over the next 10 months I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. It was some of the worst months of my sobriety. And what happened was that God literally took the prayer more serious than I did. And when I said to him, here I am for you to build with me and do with me as you will, well, God started building and doing. And it's making me nuts. Within just a couple months after saying the third step prayer, I lost my job. This is not a job. This is a career in my mind. It was in the first 4 years or so of sobriety. It was the only job I held for any length of time. I held it for close to a year. And I really wanted to do this all my life. And not only did the door close, I could not get another job working in that field, in that venue, anywhere. And I put resumes in. I filled applications out everywhere. Every single door is closed. And I'm scared. Because I'm living basically paycheck to paycheck with this job. Well, right after I lose my job, my roommate moves out, who is paying half the utilities and half the rent when I had a job. Now I got no job and nobody paying the other half. I mean, I got homelessness coming at me. I mean, it's frightening. I'm dating a girl. She dumped me. With some guy that had a lot more going on than I did. I found myself just going through these emotional roller coaster rides, crazy stuff. I remember one time just sitting, I'm drinking a cup of coffee. I'm watching some Western on TV. This is not an emotional, this is a shoot 'em up thing. I'm sitting there and I just start crying. I mean, it was crazy. It was almost like as if emotions within me that it must have been pent up for decades are starting to cook out, and it's not pretty. I went to my sponsor and I'm talking to him all about this stuff. You know what he says? He says like crazy AA stuff. He says, "Oh, you're right on track." For what, a train wreck? I mean, right on track? What are you talking about? And what's really going on? Is there anything wrong? No, there really isn't. There's nothing wrong. What's making me sick is my perception of what's going on is making me crazy. What's going on is God is changing me and changing my life, and he's doing with me and building with me. And I'm like a burnt out building. In order to rehab it, you've got to tear out a lot of crap to make room for new crap. The problem is God never showed me the plans for my approval. If he'd have called me up and said, oh, hey, Bob, that job, that's a nowhere job for you. You shouldn't even be working there. We're going to get you out of there, and we're going to get you over here learning this other business. And you're eventually going to own that company, and you're going to do very well financially, and you're going to be able to retire very young and kind of be set for life. Would that be okay for you, Bob? He didn't say it, he just took the job. If he'd have said to me, Bob, we're going to get your roommate to move out because there's a guy from Florida moving to town, and you guys are going to be very instrumental in helping a lot of people. You're going to do a lot of 12-step work together because you and him as roommates are going to be a strong force, and it's going to take your program to a new level. Would that be okay for you, Bob? He didn't say that, he just took the roommate. If he'd have told me, that girl you're dating, she's going to be drunk in 6 months, you don't want to be emotionally involved in that. It's a bad ride. I'd have said, oh, in that case, sure, God, take her. If you would have said, you've been pent up with a lot of stuff, we've got to clean you out a little bit, I'd have said, good. But he didn't say any of that. He just started doing exactly what I asked him to do. He started building with me and doing with me. And what is making me crazy, what is driving me to a level of stress at times where I feel like I'm having nervous breakdown is not what's really happening in reality. I should have been cheering what was happening, because everything that was taken had to go to make room for a better life, a better way to go for me. What's making me crazy is my judgment of what's going on. And back to the will. That really is the crux of the matter. See, I said the words, but I am holding on to my will, my opinion, my judgment of my life with a death grip, because I haven't worked the rest of the steps that are designed to dismantle the judgment machine that is self or ego. I haven't worked the rest of the steps. And if you have if you understand intellectually, as I did, that you need to relinquish your life to God because you've messed it up, and yet unconsciously and emotionally are holding on to your right to have an opinion of your life and a judgment of your life and your perception of your life, and you think it's right, and you hold on to your will about your life and try to give God your life, it's almost like saying to God, here's my life, and here's a list of how it should go. Right? Because my will is merely my way. It's how I think it should go. And so it's not unusual, if you're like that, to be consumed with worry and anxiety, the anxiety that my way may not be done. And my way is a big deal. And depression, you know what depression is? That's when God stops doing your will. Right? And so I have extreme anxiety and depression because I've not surrendered anything. I'm trying to give God, I want Him to make my life better, but I want Him to do it on my terms and in a way that makes sense to me, that I would approve of. Don't do this mystery stuff. It makes me crazy. And there's a very thin line between nervous breakdown and surrender. They almost look the same, don't they? What is it about? We live in a society that now it's the worst it's ever been in the history of the planet, where natural, God-given, emotional, spiritual events in our life that will change us and move us into everything that we should be, we stop them and we dial them down with medication because we live in a society where we think it's our divine right to feel wonderful all the time and to be gratified. And I did that all my life with alcohol and drugs. Every time I should have went through things that most people grow up a little bit more emotionally. I didn't. I just went and got drunk. I went and got drunk. And so I'll tell you, there were times in that period of time where I just thought I was losing my mind with fear. And God was taking care of me. He was doing amazing things in my life. Everything that he took had to go. But you don't know that until hindsight. And I think unfortunately, that seems to be the way of it for most of us. I have this hard time trusting God because of my own self-centered fear. And I've listened to my fear a lot longer and a lot more consistently than I've listened to any kind of still small voice of God within me. So if you're the person that doesn't have any kind of regular, consistent contact with God, you need a sponsor louder than your head. And you need to be surrendered to that. I run into people every once in a while. We just buried one not too long ago who said, I don't need a sponsor. God's my sponsor. Well, the book says our ultimate reliance is upon Him. That's true. The problem with that is, on a bad spiritual hair day, there is no connection with you and God. At the moments that I need direction, the most desperately are the moments I can't get it. And the great power in Alcoholics Anonymous is that we're all not disconnected on the same day. We're not self-consumed to the extreme example on the same day. And another thing that happens with us is that I can be so full of myself with my own particular problems, and a sponsee will call me, and all of a sudden I hear his pain and distress and worry and concern, and it pulls me out of myself. And at that moment, I am free enough to help him and be a channel for something. There's a covenant in Alcoholics Anonymous. And people argue all the time, well, why should I listen to a sponsor? He can't even manage his own life. That's true. He can't. But Charles Manson would do a better job on yours than you have. I mean, really, when you look at it objectively. And the covenant in Alcoholics Anonymous is that when two or more of us come together for the purpose of recovery, there He will be in the midst. Is that when I work with my sponsor, there's something there there's the whole is greater than the parts. That happens in AA meetings. That the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There's something that appears here when we get together. There's something in the consciousness of the room, just as there is in the consciousness of working with sponsors and sponsees. I'm just curious, how many people in here sponsor people? Would you raise your hand? How many people have sponsored people for more than 5 years? Okay. You guys will get this. The other guys may get this. They may get it. There are moments when I'm with someone I sponsor who I really care about, and they have a problem, and I don't have anything. I mean, I really don't. I don't know what to tell them. And all of a sudden, something I don't even know starts coming out of me. And it is amazing. I have had experiences where I've found myself caring about a guy who's really in a lot of pain and he needs something and I don't got nothing. And all of a sudden, I hear myself saying things to him that it's blowing. I'm thinking to myself, I should write this down. I think I'm going to need this later. I mean, really. And what is that? It's the great reality deep down within us. And isn't it funny that the channel, I can't open that channel for any kind of intuition to serve myself. It only opens up when I'm carrying out my primary purpose. I can't do it to go to the casino to figure out the right bet. It doesn't work like that. I can't use it to serve self. But something happens to me when I care about you that I get free of me. And that's when God is the most present in my life. So, I say this third step prayer and God starts changing me. But I battled with this, carrying out this decision. And I thought the problem was in step 3. And the problem wasn't in step 3. And I hadn't really gone on with the rest of the steps. As a matter of fact, it alludes to that on the bottom of page 63 and the top of 64 when it says, Next, that's like after getting up off your knees with step 3. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. Though our decision, step 3, was a vital, and it is, a vital and a crucial step, it is the turning point. It could have little permanent effect unless at once, which in my case was 4 years, unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Boy, I know what it feels to be stuck, to be blocked. I know what it's like to get down on my knees in the morning and with the intention of giving my life to God today, and I can't get out of the driver's seat. I can't get out of the control center. I'm stuck up in here. You know that place up in here where you run the scenarios of what they'll say and what I'll say, where you're looking into the future and you're trying to protect yourself from problems that are perceived that haven't occurred yet. I can't stop doing that because I have not dismantled my will. And so we enter into a process that's designed to unblock us. Unblock me from what? Well, obviously, from carrying out the decision in step 3. I can have all the intentions in the world, I can't carry it out. I'm blocked. Also blocking me from God. I don't have, by the time I took my 4th step out of the book, I'm a little over 4 years sober. I mean, I'm praying twice a day, but there is no conscious contact. I am so full of myself. And this God within that other people talk about, that's not my reality. And I'm also blocked from other people in a peculiar type of way. I started to feel really lonely in my self-righteousness and angst in my own sobriety. I was going to a lot of meetings. I'd become very judgmental of people. I became very self-righteous, very full of myself. I had somebody accuse me of having my sense of humor surgically removed. I mean, I was just so... I'm that guy, I'm the preachy guy. I'm the guy that's taken all the things he's learned in AA and lording it over people. And, that crap. I've been that guy. Taking the stuff that AA and God would give me and using it for my own self-righteous self-grandizement. I'm that guy. And I'm blocked from you. And there's a loneliness about that. There's a loneliness about that. Doesn't matter how right you think you are. There's a loneliness about that. And my spirit doesn't seek to be right. It seeks community. It seeks connectivity. It yearns for it. When the book says that God will show us how to create the fellowship we crave, I wouldn't have even admitted. My ego was too proud to admit that I craved connectivity. I craved fellowship. Those of us who lived in the isolation, stuck up in our own heads in the loneliness of alcoholism. Why do you think we drank, for God's sakes? Because 5 shots of whiskey and it would set me free. I could come out and play. I could be a part of. It gave me a sense of community. When alcohol really worked, oh my God. It was like in a glass, 4 ounces of instant spirituality. It was amazing. When alcohol turned on me, it didn't work, so I had to start doing this. And so what do? We enter into this process of self-reduction. And my first 4 years, I did 2 4 steps, the life story. And I was very, very honest. All those little sleazy, shameful things, the sex things, the money I stole, all that stuff, it was all on there. Didn't change me at all. Got a few secrets off my chest. I did the other one out of the 12 steps and 12 traditions. Nothing changed. And then I started this process that's designed, as Dr. Harry Tiebout say, it's designed for ego reduction in depth. And we start with the resentment section, and it's in 3 sections: resentments, fears, and sex conduct. And these are the 3 ways to really dismantle self. to see how I was wrong. And the first thing it asked me to do is to make a list of resentments. But basically, in a sense, it's to make a list of my judgments. It's everybody that I know is out of line. Everybody that's been wrong. I'm making a list of the stupid people, the idiots, the people that are selfish, the people that are selfish. I'm making a list of basically the people that if there was any justice in the world would owe me and the universe an amends. And I'm listing them all. I tell the guys I sponsor, don't minimize this stuff because sometimes the ego's smart. The ego's clever. It's smarter than we are. Sometimes it reads ahead. It knows that there's an amends coming, so it wants to minimize the resentment list. You know what I mean? And we'll sweep stuff out of the way. Oh, it doesn't bother me. I tell the guys I sponsor, it's put them all down. Allow yourself to be childish and petty. Because you are anyway. Let's not hide this stuff. Just put it down. Even the little squirmy stuff where somebody did some little child thing that's just stupid that hurt your feelings and you didn't want to admit that hurt your feelings because it's so pathetic. So now you have to stare at them with some kind of vigilance until you find other things to justify hating them. Do you ever notice that the moment you get a resentment from that moment on, that person can't do anything right, can they? They just can't. It's just like, even if they did something altruistic and loving and kind and magnanimous, what do you say to yourself? Phony son of a bitch, just showing off. The ego wants to be right about these people. Even when the evidence becomes overwhelming that they're not the same as you thought, as you freeze-framed them 2 decades earlier in your resentment, in your perception. 2 decades later, the evidence is overwhelming that they've changed, but your ego does not want to accept that they're not the same person you remembered. Your ego wants to be right. It doesn't care if it kills you. As long as after you're dead, everybody goes, yeah, but he was right. He was right. So I'm listing all these judgments. And in the resentment section, there's 6 things the book asks to do. 4 of them involve writing. 1 of them is a prayer. And 1 of them is a vital, very important, and often overlooked realization that's crucial. The first thing it says, we list. So I'm going to go down the page. I'm going to list, and the book says, people, institutions, or principles with whom we are angry. And if you want to look at the example on page 65, the first list is down the left-hand side. It's who, basically. People, institutions, principles. I think you'll find, if you're anything like me, you'll find 95% of it probably people. Might get occasional institution in there. The IRS shows up often. Sometimes the church shows up often. The police department shows up often. But a lot of times, if you look more specifically in some of those things, it really wasn't the police. It was that one cop that beat the crap out of me. It wasn't. But resentments are funny. Because when I resent someone, I spread it. Next thing I know, I resent their relatives, their neighbors, their whole race, their whole religion. You know what I mean? It's like, do you ever have the experience of having a resentment in AA towards someone? And somebody you really like comes up to you and starts talking to you, and you realize that they like the person you resent, and you automatically just start going like this, right? Because resentments spread like cancer. Like they just grow. And so I will find that when I get more specific, that a lot of these institutions may be just one individual. But regardless, I put them down, column number 1, who. And then it says we ask ourselves why. Column number 2, the cause, why we were angry. And if you'll notice on page 65, in the responses to each person that they resented, they might have 2, 3, a couple bullet points, and they're very brief and very to the point. Bullet points, that's all, just bullet points. I think they represent that for a reason. It makes sense to me. I know the way I am. If I'm going to get too much verbiage and write too much, what I'm doing is I'm building my case so whoever I read this to will see how screwed up these people are. So it's too easy to slip into justification And what we're really looking for is the facts. What actually happened? As Sergeant Friday used to say in Dragnet, the facts, man, just the facts. So I put the bullet points down. And then the third thing I do, what the book uses 5 terms. Starting at the top of page 65, we're looking for the aspects of self that were hurt, that were threatened, that were injured, that were interfered with, or affected. And it's all trying to get at the same thing, just like from different angles, but to find out the aspects of self. And you know how you know it's self? Well, beginning, because when we started into that, which says we're going to look for the manifestations of self, which have defeated us. And if on the bottom of page 64, on the top of 65, if you change the pronouns from the third person to the first person, it's very clear. We ask ourselves why we were angry. We found that in most cases, wasn't it my self-esteem, my pocketbook, my ambitions, my personal relationships, including sexual hurt, threatened. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. What was injured? Was it my self-esteem, my security? So in column number 3, we're looking at how self was disturbed or affected, injured, interfered with. Now, this in and of itself is not the end result. Matter of fact, if all you do is the first 3 columns, you're going to become sicker. Because what you've really done is you've re-victimized yourself at depth. That's why you'll see people sober 20 years, they're still judgmental and still angst and angry, and they're right. And they're right about everything. Because as far as they ever went is to acknowledge that these people aggravated them. And they never went any further. But there is a dismantling process that occurs on the next 2 pages that has changed my life so dramatically. I mean, it's unbelievable. All those years in therapy didn't touch what would happen to me in the next 2 pages on this book. Everything I've done in Alcoholics Anonymous could not budge what the next 2 pages did to me when I was ready to do it. It's life-changing. I tell the guys I sponsor, and to this date, everybody who does this agrees. If you really do this out of the book, I'll tell you something that will happen to you for the rest of your stay here. You'll be able to go to a meeting and have a conversation with someone just for 5 minutes, or listen to them share for 5 or 10 minutes. And you'll know without them ever telling you whether they ever did this or not, because it changes you. You'll never, ever, ever, ever be able to sell yourself the old BS that you're a victim about anything. You'll know. And your whole angle of approach to life consequently will shift as a result of this. You will know. You will know what the monkey wrench in your machine has been all along. And so the bottom of 65, after we make the first 3 columns, it says we went back through our lives, nothing counted but thoroughness. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. So I'm going to take a look at these first 3 columns, and I have to I have to see some stuff. And I'm not going to read all of page 66, but you can read it yourself. It hammers a point over and over again about how this stuff is fatal, it's infinitely grave, it's poison, it cuts you off from the sunlight of the spirit, it kills you dead, your flesh is going to rot and stink, and it's going to be horrible and bad, and your neighbors aren't going to like you. It's going to be a bad deal, and it's just trying to sell you that point that this stuff's killing you. And why does it do that? Because of a line that's so crucial. The second line in the second full paragraph towards the bottom. It's trying to prepare me. Everything up to this point is trying to prepare me. The whole discussion about the actor who wants to run the whole show, the selfishness, self-centeredness, stepping on the toes of our fellows, and how they retaliate, on and on, is all trying to bring me to this point where it says we're prepared to look at these judgments, these resentments, from an entirely different angle. Well, what would that be? Well, okay. Let's first of all, let's look at how we've been looking at it. Wouldn't it be sound and safe to say that I had these cases built on these people? And in a peculiar sense, isn't it like the position of a prosecuting attorney? I mean, in the first 3 columns, I got the perpetrator, I got the nefarious deeds he did, and I got what was hurt, threatened, affected, or injured. These are the cases I've built against these people. So I'm looking at them from a point of view of a prosecuting attorney. So what would be an entirely different angle? Wouldn't it be to get up off the prosecuting attorney's bench in the courtroom and walk across the courtroom and sit down on the defense table and now start having dialogue about what happened between you and him from their point of view? Start looking at it through their eyes. Start seeing it from their perspective, an entirely different angle. Now, I don't know about your personal resentments, but I can bet on one thing. I bet you the dialogue they would have about what happened between you and them and the dialogue you have between what happened between you and them are 2 different dialogues. Those are 2 different conversations. Now, the ego goes, well, I'm right and they're right. Yeah, that's the ego always says that, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Are you prepared to look at this from an entirely different angle? Are you surrendered enough? Are you awake enough that you'd rather be free than right? You'd rather be happy than right. I have a friend that goes, well, I'm happy when I'm right. No, you think you are. No, that's not really true. That's the ego's clamoring. Are you willing to entertain the possibility that your perception and your judgment of these people in this situation may not be right? Can you even begin to get a glimpse of how it looked through their eyes? And then the book moves on. It says something interesting. It says, in this state, we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. I am a hostage to my own judgments. And then I love this line. It says, in that state, the wrongdoings of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. What are they implying there? The wrongdoings of others, fancied. Fancied? What do you mean fancied? Fancied or real? Had the power to kill me? I'll tell you a story. This is before I did the 4-step out of the book. Very important event, and it was one of many. I'll tell you, God has his way with people that show up and do 12-step work and get involved in AA. This is a fertile ground for spiritual growth. It really is. It's amazing. And there was a guy in Alcoholics Anonymous named Billy Taylor, and Billy was an old-timer. And Billy used to like to take new guys out to coffee after the meeting and sit around and talk about AA. And I got a lot of my Alcoholics Anonymous in coffee shops. I thought that sometimes the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting were better than the meeting. And I got a lot of that. And I was sitting in a coffee shop one night, late at night with Billy. And Billy was an easy guy to talk to. And because he was an easy guy to talk to, I did something I didn't plan on doing and didn't intend to do. I told him a couple of my deep shameful secrets. And we all got stuff like that. You know, everybody I know gets sober with something that they're ashamed of. Maybe it's a sexual thing, maybe it's a money thing, maybe you beat your kids, maybe some kind of lie you told that really hurt somebody. We all got something, you know, and I had a couple of them, and I told Billy what they were, and he seemed to take it okay. He didn't reject me. I tell you, it would have helped if he would have said, "Oh, me too." He didn't say that. He'd never done this stuff. But he did say, he said, "I'm sure you're not the only one in AA that's ever done that. Someday this stuff will help somebody." And even though it did sound a little bit like the AA party line, he didn't reject me, so I didn't feel too bad about it. I went home that night, didn't think much of it. I went to work that week, and I don't know if it was the next day or the day after. Within the next couple of days, I got my shift changed. And now, instead of working from 8 in the morning to 4, I'm working from 4 to midnight, which turned my whole meeting pattern upside down. Now I'm going to noon meetings, and I had to eventually start a 12:15 midnight meeting because I need to get to meetings. So I'm not going to the 7, 8 o'clock meetings I normally go to at night. And so what happened is a good part of a year went by, and I didn't see Billy anywhere because I'm not going to the meetings he goes to. And one night, I was working 6 days a week at that time, and I had a night on my one night off. I went to a meeting I normally wouldn't go to at night, and Billy was in the meeting. And it was really good to see him. I hadn't seen him for almost a year. I was lit up to see him. And I just, Billy, man, how you doing, Billy? And he just looked at me with this look on his face of like, it felt like rejection. It felt like disgust. It felt like, get away from me. And then he turns, like he didn't want to look at me. He just looked at me with this horrible look and then turned away. And the meeting starts, and I'm sitting there, and I can't hear nothing in the meeting because I know what just happened here. When he saw me, he remembered the stuff I told him. When he saw me, he's judging me for that crap. And it's aggravating me because it's hurting my feelings. And there's a part of me, I know, there's a part of me that somewhere can't blame him. God knows I've judged myself harshly enough for that stuff. I guess I've always secretly believed that if you knew about me what I knew about me, you'd feel about me the way I feel about me, and that's not good. And I think that's one of the reasons I kept myself walled off. Because my own self-condemnation is worse than any human beings on earth. Nobody could be as hard on me as I am. But I don't know that. And I'm sitting there and I'm hurt. And then I'm sitting there and I don't get hurt and stay hurt. I get angry when I'm hurt. It is automatic. It's knee-jerk with me. It's a defense mechanism. It's hardwired in me. And I start getting angry. And I start thinking about that hypocritical SOB. Telling me all that stuff. What a phony guy. Judging me for that stuff. What kind of AA member is he? And then I had this epiphany. I started thinking, oh, wait a minute. Oh, my God. You know the reason he can't even look me in the eye? Oh, my God, he's been telling everybody that stuff. It became so clear to me. I had just asked a girl out that he's friends with, and she wouldn't go out with me. And I knew he told her that slimy stuff. There's another guy who bums around with Billy all the time. And last time I saw him, he'd be a little distant. I knew he's telling people that stuff. And now I'm enraged. And it's not just about me anymore. Because if he's doing that to me, he's probably doing it to newcomers also. And he's probably ruining Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to straighten this out. And I'm not going to let him get away with this. And as soon as this meeting's over, I'm going to beat the crap out of him. And he's going to learn his lesson. And they're probably going to build a statue for me in AA and World Service headquarters. Because it's not about me anymore. It's global. Not that I'm prone to justification. And I'm cocked and ready, man. I'm steaming. I'm really mad. I am really, really mad. And I'm going to tear into this guy. And the meeting's over. And the chairman says, before we end, does anybody have a burning desire? And Billy raises his hand. He tells everybody that the biopsy came back and it's stage 4. And he's terminal. And he believes he has a very short time to live. And I'm sitting there. And I remember sinking down into my chair and just going, oh my God. And all of a sudden it was like a veil lifted up and I could see what was going on. I remembered his face when I tried to say hi to him, how he looked. He didn't even see me really. He looked like he was looked through me. And I realized that look on his face was not about me. It was the look of a guy who just found out he was dying. I realized that he never had talked about me. He never judged me. That on the day he found out he was terminally ill, he was so afraid and up in his head scared as I would be that he didn't even see me or anybody else in that room. He couldn't see past his own death sentence. And it was like a postcard from God Dear Bob, you don't know crap. Love God. Well, the wrongdoings of others fancied or real had the power to actually kill. If I would have attacked a man who did nothing but help me on the lowest day of his life and then found out later what I had done, I think I would have had to drink myself to death. I don't think I could have ever walked back into Alcoholics Anonymous where he was so loved. I think it would have been a death sentence for me. And I would have died in my own pride and my own crap. And this was an important event because I had several like this in my early sobriety, because now I'm a little over 4 years sober, and the book's going to ask me to do something that is very foreign to the alcoholic mind and consciousness. On a little further down the page, it says, right in the next line actually, it says, how could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered. But how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol, and that's really true. Have you ever tried to wish one away? Because intellectually you know you're not supposed to have them. I mean, I think the ego is so smart here that you go to a few meetings and after a while the ego gets it. Resentments. Bad resentments. Bad resentments. So we're just never going to have them again. Well, that's not how you get free. That's how you make an ulcer. What do you do when you can't stop judging someone and you can't shake the judgment? I've had that spot. In my 11th year of sobriety, I found out that my wife had been having an affair the last year of my marriage with one of my best friends, a sponsee. And people in AA would say crazy things to me. Well, just don't think about it. How do you stop thinking about something you can't stop thinking about? How do you stop judging something you're locked into? You can't. We can't wish them away any more than alcohol. Before I ever did this fourth step out of the book, I took a sponsee through the fourth step. I had just been to a Joe and Charlie weekend, and I started to understand what to do. And I sat down with a guy, and I'm going through the book with him, and I'll tell you, you'd never see the book as clearly as when you're looking at it to help someone else. It's funny, I could see things in the book in this part that I couldn't have seen trying to figure it out for me, but I'm trying to help him. And we get to this point, and this guy has got a lot of resentments. I mean, a lot of resentments. And he's jacked up, and he knows, he gets it. He buys the whole page. This stuff's going to kill him, and he knows it. And he says to me, I says, you can't wish it away more with alcohol. And he says to me, oh my God, what do I do? And I don't know. I hadn't done this yet. I don't know. I got nothing here. I don't know what to tell him. And I just hung my head. I don't know. And I looked down at the book, and I swear, it was like the next 4 words were in neon. It says, this was our course. And I said, well, this was our course. Like I knew or so. I didn't know. And I just read it. I said, well, we got to realize that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us. They, like ourselves, were sick too. What does that mean? Well, the first line's easy. To realize that the people who wronged you were perhaps spiritually sick. Yeah, they're sick and they're stupid and they're idiots. And no, I get that. But here's the line that changed my life. Though I did not like their symptoms, what symptoms? Column number 2, the bullet points. If they were right with themselves and right with God and right with God's kids, would they have done what they did in column number 2? I don't think so. Look at your own 8-step list. If you were right with God, right with yourself, and right, would you have hurt all those people? No. I had a long 8-step list. Honest to God, there was not one person on that list I set out intentionally to hurt, but I hurt them just the same in my effort to live on self-will, to gratify myself, to do for me. I stepped on the toes of a lot of people. I didn't intend to. But that's your collateral damage in my effort to fix me and my effort to wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world by managing well. You're collateral damage. Everybody in my life was collateral damage. By the time I got sober, you couldn't have found anybody on the planet that would have had something nice to say about me. You couldn't have found one person left, including my mother and father, sister. You couldn't have found anybody that would have said, oh yeah, loaning Bob $100 is a good idea. There's nobody left that thinks helping me or having anything to do with me is a good idea. And I did that. Did I intend to do it? No. Did I do it? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And if that's true for me, because I'm asleep and I don't even know what's going on, could that be true for them? So I don't like their symptoms, column number 2, and the way they affected me, disturbed me, column number 3, pocketbook, ambition, sex relations, pride. I don't like the way they disturbed that, the way they threatened that, they affected that, they hurt that. I don't like any of that. But here's the kicker. Here's the thing that started to change my life. But even though all that's true, can I realize that this person, like myself, was sick too? What does that mean? Like myself? That they're like me? That they're sick like me? What are they talking about? They're asking me to make a realization. It's very, very hard. I got to come down off the high horse. I got to come down off the throne of judgment. I got to come down and look right across the table at you. And I got to see myself in you. I got to see that if I was raised the way you were raised, if I was hurt the way you were hurt, because hurt people will hurt people, that if I was scared, if I was alone, if I was frustrated, if I had everything going on in me that's going on in you, can I see myself in you clearly enough to know that I too would have done what you did if I was driven by what you were driven by? See, the ego doesn't like that. The ego likes to exist in a state of separation and smug superiority. As we puff ourselves up and feel smugly superior to those that had hurt us, and how we say little things to ourselves all the time. Somebody hurts us. Asshole. I wouldn't have done that. What a creep. As if you could feel the puff of the superiority. But now they're asking me to deflate myself and come down to earth enough to put myself in their shoes, to see if I had everything going on inside of me that was going on inside of them, that I would easily have reacted to life and to me and to the situation like they did. And what a powerful, powerful thing. As I started to see myself in these people, I started to get them. I started to realize, and what I found, what was kind of tragic, I judged you so harshly for doing some of these things, and I looked at my own life, I did some of the same things. Matter of fact, sometimes I was worse. I was worse. I was more selfish than you were. I was less tolerant than you were. I was more vengeful than you were. And I started to see myself in you, and it was an amazing, amazing thing. Something starts cooking out of that, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And that is, in the awakening, is waking up to the me that is in you, is also an understanding. Later on in the book, it says our deal is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And I start to get you. And when I start to get you, what happens is a funny side product of that is compassion. It comes from two Latin words, cum, meaning with, and passio is pain. In other words, I can get with your pain. I get you. I can sit with your pain. I get it now. I get what drove you to do what you did. I get it. The Buddhists bow to each other and they say namaste. Which one interpretation of that is the God within me recognizes the God within you. But it's also, I peep you. I see beyond the facade and the defense mechanisms. I see the scared kid inside you that's thrashing out and acting tough and violent. I peep you. I see you. You know why I see you? Because you're me. You're me. There's a guy came out of prison years ago. He's a speaker in AA actually. John was a multiple murderer. He was the head of the Aryan Brotherhood in prison. Angry guy. And I got him in my car and I'm taking him to a meeting and this guy's going on and on about all the people he's killed and all this crazy, insane stuff. And I looked at him and I said something to him that nobody had ever said to him in his whole life. I said, you must have been one of the most afraid guys in that whole prison. And he like went into shock. Nobody ever said that to him. And he didn't say, at first I thought maybe he'd swing at me. And he didn't say nothing. And then he finally broke down and he said, how did you know? I know. Why do you think I've acted violent and tough and hateful and all that stuff in my life? Because I'm so scared inside. I peeped him. I peeped him. We peep each other. And we become effective with people. I'll tell you, how much time I got? 20 minutes. I'll tell you a little story. We'll take a break. Sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous, we're building a weapon. We don't even know it. I bet you there's people in this room today that are taking actions that if you were to step back, you think, I don't really need to do all this service. I don't really need to take this in. I'm fine. But you're doing it because you want to be part of the herd. You're doing it because your sponsor tells you to do it. And you're doing it because you got sponsees and you want to tell them that they need to do it because people told you need to do it. And you can't tell them they need to do it if you're not doing it. So you got to do it so you can tell them to do it. And, you're kind of stuck here in the whole deal and you're doing it. And you don't know why you're doing it. I mean, it's not that it's a bad idea, but, maybe you got other stuff you'd rather do. But you're building a weapon you don't even know you need. I think there's been 4 times maybe in the last 33 years where I've needed everything. Or else I've been a dead man. One of those times was in my 11th year of sobriety. And thank God I had done the work out of the book. Thank God I sponsored a lot of people and I had a lot of commitments in AA. I was in a marriage to a gal, and we'd been married 4.5 years. We'd been together for 6 years. And the last year of the marriage, we got distant. I mean, we didn't fight, but just that distance. And I knew a lot of it was me. I was working. I was building this company that I would later sell. I was working. I'd work sometimes 16 hours a day. I was working a lot of hours. And then when I wasn't working, I'm doing AA because I got alcoholism and I got to do AA. I'm working a lot. I'm doing a lot of AA and I'm not there much. And she wanted a divorce and I talked her out of it and we went to some marriage counseling for a while. And my first sponsor had bought a bus, an RV, and he took off touring the country for several months and he didn't have a cell phone. So I would go, sometimes 2 weeks before I'd talk to him on the phone. It was before cell phones. He'd finally catch me at the house. And so I had a guy that I sponsored. Craig was my confidant with my marriage problems. And we'd go to the marriage counseling and I'd talk to Craig and I'd tell him what's going on. And he was very, very present through the whole thing. And one day my wife comes to me. She says, I don't want to go to the counseling anymore. I want out. I live in Las Vegas. You can get a divorce very quickly in Las Vegas. I mean, so quickly that you paid for the divorce with a visa. You're single 2 weeks and you haven't got the visa bill yet. I mean, that's how quick. We got a divorce on a Thursday. The next morning, Friday morning, I realized that my daughter of almost 2 years old and my ex-wife of 12 hours, 20, not 20 hours most, moved in with Craig, my best friend, my confidant, my marriage problems. Now, I'm sober over 10 years in my 11th year of sobriety. You guys have been telling me for all this time there's no such thing as a justifiable resentment. Well, I got one now. I mean, this is no, your resentments are unjustifiable. This is really a legitimate, this isn't your kind of petty. This is the real deal here. And I could even sucker old timers into agreeing with me, and they'd say that, what is it about me? I could walk into a room, 100 people, and just intuitively know to go to the people that'll go, oh, Bob, you got such a bad deal there. Oh, yes, I did. I had one old time guy said, Bob, didn't you just buy her a new car? And I said, yes, I did. And the nail holes in my hands opened up a little more, Well, I started getting real sick. It was scary sick. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was eating me alive, and God was very gracious to me. I'll tell you, He sent me waves of new guys and guys sober a long time, a whole bunches of guys that were going through relationship breakups and marriage breakups. And all of a sudden, I'm the sponsor and half the divorced and broken up people in AA. I'd pile them in my car. We'd go to meetings. We'd be the depressed section of the meeting, Remember sitting at the SOS Club one time, listening to the secretary tell the chairman, don't call on any of them, But these guys bought me some islands in my life of freedom from my problems as I would listen to theirs. And God saved me from myself long enough that I was able to come back and do the resentment list for both of them. And I'll tell you what I saw was amazing. I listed both their names in column 1. Column number 2, the things that they did, the causes, the lies, the infidelity, the cheating, all of that. Column number 3, what was affected, hurt, threatened, injured, everything. Pride was devastated. It seemed to me like everybody in AA knew about this affair except me. I felt horrible about it. My pocketbook, my personal relationships, everything. And then the book says, are you prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle? And I was. I didn't want to be right anymore. I wanted to be free. I was like the rat. I don't want any more of that cheese. Just God, get me out of the trap. I wanted to be free. And so I had to see how the people who had harmed me was perhaps like me. And what I had to do is I had to put myself in their place and look at it through their eyes from an entirely different angle. And when I put myself in Karen's eyes, I'll tell you what I saw I did not like. I used to bluster myself by telling myself I was such a good husband and a great provider, and we never fought, and I never cheated on her, and all that's true. But when I put myself in her shoes and looked at the relationship through her eyes, here's what I saw. I saw a woman who fell in love with a guy who was very involved in AA, and she wasn't. Matter of fact, she's been sober almost 30 years. She hasn't been to a meeting. I don't even think she's an alcoholic. She hasn't been to a meeting in 15, 18 years probably. She did not get her vacancies filled by a business and by her involvement in AA. She turned to the marriage and the relationship to fill all her empty spaces. And in no time at all, she found herself married to a guy that wasn't home much. A guy that was so busy building this empire, financial empire, and this great AA life, that he wasn't home much. And even when he did come home, he'd be so exhausted. And he is what they talk about in the family afterwards, is a guy who is emotionally inaccessible. Did we fight? No. Were we intimate? I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what it means. And what do you do when when you don't know how to do the day in and day out stuff. See, here's the kind of guy I am. I get in a relationship. I'm good about the first 6 months. I got all kinds of funny stories to tell you. Tell you about my childhood. We'll talk about all the music I like, the movies. We'll talk about different things in AA. We'll visit it all. And then we run out of things to visit. And real intimacy is often done in silence. But when you're a little weird, you don't know how to do that. And so I stay busy. And I could tell you, and it's true, that I did have this opportunity. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build this amazing business. And it required me to work a lot. And that's true. And I can also tell you, and it's also true, that I have alcoholism and I had to do AA. And that is true. But also both of those things were convenient. Because I don't understand how to deal with the real intimacy in the empty spaces. I don't know how to just sit with someone and experience life. I don't know how to do any of that. So I stay busy. A lot of guys do that. I sponsor a lot of guys that don't know how to be intimate, so they settle for sex and busy because they don't know how to do anything else. And when I was able to put myself squarely in her position, I started to get a sense of the loneliness that must have aided her day in and day out in that marriage. And she came from an alcoholic home, and consequently she could not do confrontation. She couldn't do it. She didn't know how. She wasn't wired for it yet. Later, many years later, she could do it. She couldn't do it then. And so she couldn't even tell me. And that which made her loneliness even worse. And I remember really getting it and thinking to myself, my God, how did she stay in that marriage as long as she did? And I could see very clearly how in desperation and loneliness, how she'd be driven to reach out to someone else. Could I blame her? No. Could I understand her? Yeah. I got to go make amends to her. And I don't remember the exact words I said, but I said something along the lines of, I want you to know that I am so sorry that I was so self-centered and wrapped up in myself that I never understood how lonely and distant you must have felt in that marriage. And I know that under other circumstances that you would have never did what you did, and she wouldn't have. She was a very cool lady. And I drove her to it. If I would have, the day of our marriage, if I would have hired a board of the most brilliant psychologists and sociologists in the country, and I would have sat them in a room like this, and I would have said, listen, guys, here's the woman I'm going to marry. She is very loyal, very principled. She is a good gal. She will not cheat on her husband. She's a good gal. Now, I want you guys to put your heads together, and I want you to come up with a game plan that I could initiate over the next couple of years that would make her cheat on me. Couldn't you come up with something? They couldn't have come up with anything more effective than what I put into order in the next couple of years of my life. And the sad thing, I don't even know I'm doing it. I'm asleep in my own life. I don't even, the problem why alcoholics at times seem so inconsiderate, we're not consciously inconsiderate. I'm staring so much at me, I can't see you. Right? I'm just looking at my life and my work and my stuff. I don't see you because there's too much of me between me and you. And so I'm asleep in the daydream of the chatter of the stories I tell myself about my life. And I went to make amends to her, and I told her, I said, I'm so sorry. And she started crying. I think all she ever wanted me to do was for me to get it. She just wanted me to understand. She started crying. And we have a relationship today that is spectacular. She didn't go to AA anymore. She's been an amazing mother to my daughter. And my daughter and I are very, very close. And she calls and leaves messages and sends me Father's Day cards and birthday cards and things that are almost embarrassing, the nice things she says about me. It's amazing. And she's a minister now. She has in a church up in Northern California. I suppose in my small way I drove her towards the Lord. I don't know. My second wife ended up in prison, so there is balance in the universe. My sponsor says, yeah, we suspect you're a carrier. We're just not sure of what. And I did the same thing for him. And he was easy. You'd think he'd be harder. My God, your best friend, your sponsee, the guy you pulled out of the detox, helped turn his life around. You think he'd be really hard to forgive and understand. He's a guy. Well, hey, listen. I sponsor. I know about me, and I know about the guys I sponsor. We're very well-intentioned, noble, principled guys. We really are. But you put us in a situation, we get it. One of the things we learn to do is to protect us from us. And a guy can be the most good-intentioned guy in the world, and he gets with a woman, and if he's lonely enough and horny enough, and she touches him a certain way, where did those good intentions go? They were here a minute ago. Because the guy doesn't have the power. He caves. If anything, we learn to protect ourselves from ourselves. And I understood. He said to me one time, he couldn't even get a date in early sobriety. He was kind of pathetic. And he said to me one time, he said, gee, Bob, if someday I could just have what you have with Karen. I didn't know he meant specifically. I thought maybe he meant in a generalized way. And so I know what happened. She's lonely and vacant and resentful towards me, and she opens that door and he caves. Of course he did. Did he hate himself for it? Almost killed him. A little while later, I started sponsoring him again. Isn't that bizarre? Matter of fact, I've done weekends like this with him. I guess going back and forth. I did it one time down in Los Angeles, and there's about 200 people in the room. And I'm talking about this. I'm telling this exact same story, and they don't know it's the guy sitting next to me. And I say, oh, by the way, the guy I'm talking about is on next. And the whole audience went, oh! One of the high points of my life. And he's a good guy. And the thing you start to get when you do this is that he paid the same price for those actions that I would pay. It almost killed him. He was very lucky to survive that because he ended up feeling about himself the same way I would feel about myself if I did something like that. In the same way I suppose you would feel about yourself if you did something like that. How much the same we are. No, what aggravates me and feeds my resentments is I look at the outward defense mechanisms and bravado in people's lives that have hurt me, and it looks like they just got away with it. And that's what aggravates me. Now, if you hurt me and are devastated and are properly ashamed of yourself, well, it's fine with me. What drives me crazy, it looks like, is if you hurt me and then you start acting happy. Oh. And I don't see their insides. I don't see that inside them they're paying the same price I would pay. How often we sabotage other areas of our life. And he has had a hard time in a lot of areas of his life. In relationships and in finances. And he's tried to get even. And he struggles. As I would. Let's take a 8-minute break.